Have you ever noticed that whenever there's a problem, you're always there? Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Hillary Jubilee. If you're new, I talk about manifestation, conscious creation, and the law of assumption. If you're into those topics, please hit the subscribe button below and hit the bell notification to be notified every time I post a new video. I am a 2-time certified life coach, and I do offer manifestation coaching by email at the moment, and the link for that is in the description below if you feel like you need an extra helping hand. Of course, everything you need is inside of yourself, but sometimes it can be helpful to have a second pair of eyes, look at the situation from on the outside. So today's video is one that I have been looking forward to making for a few months now, and it is about hooponopono. I have been studying, Bambi, what are you doing? I have been studying hooponopono for the last few months. I've taken 3 courses total on it. So I'm very excited to share some of this knowledge with you guys. So what I'm not going to do is compare and contrast between hooponopono and the law of assumption in this video. I'm going to make a whole separate video on that because it needs to be done, but there's already a lot to cover on what hooponopono is. Surprisingly, if you've heard of it, you know, you might just think it's the 4 phrases, like what more could there be to it? And that's what I thought too when I saw an ad for a course on hooponopono. And I just thought, how can you study, 4 phrases? So anyways, I'm gonna do my best not to compare and contrast law of assumption principles with the basics of hooponopono in this video. I will do that in another video to save time. So for those of you who don't know what hooponopono is, what I used to know it as was just a 4-phrase prayer. And I used to use it to calm down if I had reacted to the 3D. So I mentioned that in my video, what to do after reacting to the 3D. I will link that above. And the 4 phrases are, if you're unfamiliar with them, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. So those are the main 4 phrases. That's all that I knew prior to taking these courses. So let us start with the pronunciation of the word, because I'm pretty sure I mispronounced it in my video when I mentioned it, and it's not that hard to pronounce, so let's just get it right. It's hooponopono. Okay, so now that we know how to pronounce it, what does it mean? So it's described in the Hawaiian dictionary as mental cleansing, family conferences in which relationships were set right through prayer, discussion, confession, repentance, mutual restitution, and forgiveness. So when you break down the word, ho'o is a particle as the word to is in the English language, and ponopono means correct, revise, amend, rectify, tidy up, make orderly or neat. So basically, hooponopono means to make right. So it still is practiced in some parts of Hawaii, but originally it started out as an ancient Hawaiian practice for families to resolve conflict. Hooponopono became what it is today, what you may know of as the 4 phrases, because this woman, Morna Simeona, updated it into a modern version that could be done individually rather than in groups. So the reason that the prayer Hooponopono became famous in the West was because of this man named Dr. Hew Len, Dr. E. Haleakala Hew Len. And he studied with Morna. She's the one who taught him the ins and outs of Hooponopono. He studied with her for many years. Morna has since passed away, and Dr. Hew Len is alive, but he's retired. So Dr. Hew Len is a therapist who cured an entire ward of mentally insane patients without sitting with them one-on-one. All he did was see them in passing in the hallways of the mental ward and look through their files. So Dr. Hew Len worked at the Hawaii State Hospital in the mental ward for 4 years. So when he arrived, the ward was a very dangerous place, not very pleasant to be in. Anyone who visited the ward felt like they needed to, walk along the hallways with their backs against the walls, afraid of being attacked by the patients. There was a high staff turnover rate. Staff called in sick all the time, quit all the time. And Dr. Hew Len even said that the energy in the place just was so off that weird things would happen, like the toilets flushing in the middle of the night when nobody was there and things like that. So after a few months of Dr. Hew Len doing this work on himself, not sitting with the patients at all, remember, this is, it's so amazing what he's done. After just a couple months, patients who had to be shackled were being, walking around the place freely with no handcuffs on. Patients were coming off their meds completely. The whole place was shifting. Staff stayed around. The turnover rate went way down. And eventually everyone but 2 of the inmates were able to be completely released, and the whole ward is closed today. So the 4 phrases got really popular in the West because of that incredible story. And Dr. Joe Vitale, I don't know if you know who that is, but he is a author. He was in the movie The Secret, and he was the one who ran 2 of the courses that I took. And in one of them, Dr. Hew Len was in the course with Dr. Joe Vitale. He wrote a book called Zero Limits, which is really good, about hooponopono. And it's got the story of Dr. Hew Len in there. And then 10 years later, he wrote At Zero. So those are both about the prayer. But in the course with Dr. Hew Len, he walks in the room and the first thing he says is, the room is sacred. And he says basically that inanimate objects are to be treated as sacred. And some of the things that he said could be construed as, insane or crazy, but he's talking about how everything has consciousness, which I will get into it in the video where I compare and contrast law of assumption with hooponopono. But if you really think about it, it does make sense that everything should have consciousness, because nothing is separate from you. So I'm not going to get into the comparing right now. I'm trying not to. But basically he says that airplanes talk to him, highways talk to him, he converses with inanimate objects. And stay with me if that sounds crazy to you. Just, you don't need to believe that part if you don't want to, but you can look into his story. He's a really cool guy. So everything is sacred, nothing is outside of you. And the main point of hooponopono is 100% responsibility. And I love this. So I will say this, in the law of assumption community, there is the question of whether, when terrible things happen in life or in general in the world that you hear about, and people are like, well, I didn't create that. Like, I'm not taking responsibility for that. I didn't do that on purpose. I'm not gonna, take on the guilt and the pressure of certain things that happen in the world. Like, I had nothing to do with that. Why would I, take that on? And with Ho'oponopono, there are no exceptions, okay? 100% responsibility. And there's a distinct difference between guilt, shame, and blame and responsibility. So an analogy that I came up with for this is if you have a pet or a child, and let's say your pet or child destroys somebody's property. As I'm talking about pets and children, Bambi's messing around over there. Let's say that your pet or child destroys somebody's property. You did not mean for that to happen, right? It's the pet or child's fault, but you don't yell at the child. Let's say the child's like a baby. You don't yell at the child. You don't yell at your cat or your dog. I mean, some people might, but it's pointless, right? Like they didn't mean to do it. They didn't mean to. All you do is you take responsibility for the mess and you clean up the mess. You pay for the damage. You take responsibility. You say, "I'm sorry that this happened." Or even another example is if you bump into somebody. You didn't mean to bump into them. You just say, well, here in Canada we say sorry a lot, but if you bump into somebody, you say sorry because it's just an accident. Like, you don't mean to do it. You don't feel guilty about it. You didn't do it out of malice, So it's taking responsibility, but not taking on guilt, shame, and blame. So I'll explain that there's 3 states of consciousness that Dr. Hew Len explains that you could be in at any one time. So with Hooponopono, this is how it works. The first state is 0. So 0 is basically God, infinite intelligence. You know, I've talked about my videos before. Underneath your human mask is what I've referred to it as before, is, you know, God. You don't need to use God if that word is loaded for you, but, you know, source, divine intelligence, divinity. The void is what they call it in Hooponopono, 0 or the void. You can call it whatever you want. You know, the universe. Basically nothingness. There's no chatter going on in your mind. It's quiet, it's peace, it's pure love. That's 0. And the second state that you could be in at any one time, according to Hooponopono principles, is inspiration. And inspiration comes from being at 0. So Dr. Hew Len explains it like being struck by lightning. And I've experienced this before. It's like, bing, an idea just pops into your head. Like, oh, like, and you know, like when we talk about in the manifestation world, inspired action, and how will I know whether to take an action or not? It's like, you don't think about it. You're moved to take that action. You wouldn't be questioning it or wondering whether that's the right move to do, or, you know, you wouldn't be feeling bad about it. It's just like you're pulled towards that action. Anyways, so he talks about being struck by lightning. So inspiration is that second state that you can be at, which comes from being at 0. So you will not get inspiration unless you were chilling at 0. And the third state is memory. So memory is what Dr. Hew Len explains, that most humans are walking around in this state. So the stories, any thought basically that are playing in our minds, we're in our heads, we're not in the present. It's just mental chatter going on. So what Hooponopono refers to saying this prayer, it's called doing the cleaning. So doing the cleaning is basically saying the prayer, and you're cleaning up memory to get yourself to 0. So just gonna go back to the 100% responsibility thing for one more second. When you're going through your life, and let's say a friend explains that they've got some sort of issue, or, you know, somebody cuts you off in traffic, or something annoys you. These are all problems or things that may upset you or irritate you that seem to be outside of yourself, and they don't seem to be something that is your problem. Like, that's not my problem, that's my friend's problem, that's a bad driver, you know, all these things going around. Like, understanding that, like, nothing's separate from you, it's all a part of you, and taking 100% responsibility for whatever it is that you're not seeing as through God's eyes, you're not seeing as love, you're not seeing through divinity's eyes, you're not at 0. If you're getting triggered, annoyed, you know, about any little thing or anything at all, really, if you're not seeing clearly, because Dr. Hew Len talks about the memory state being seeing through dark glasses. It's an inaccurate view of the world. So if you're seeing, you know, through that memory and through that limited human perspective, as I like to say, it's an illusion, it's not real. So, and it's our responsibility to clean that shit up, to get ourselves, you know, back to ground 0. So taking responsibility to clean up in your own mind, if something comes up in somebody else's life even, or on the news or whatever, wherever, you're cleaning it up in your own mind. It's in your experience, so you're taking responsibility to clean on it. And you don't need to say all 4 phrases as well. So I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, and thank you. I like to say the whole prayer if something is bothering me, because what the prayer is doing is you're petitioning to divinity to transmute those memories into love. So what you're doing when you're saying I'm sorry, it's not that I'm sorry I've done something wrong. It's I'm sorry for whatever is going on in me, that I'm perceiving this as an issue. So it's not about guilt or blame again. It's just taking responsibility that you're not seeing clearly and cleaning it up. And, you know, I'm sorry for whatever's going on in myself, that I'm perceiving this as an issue, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you. So that's basically the cleaning. So, and as well, yeah, you don't need to say all four. Dr. Hew Len tends to say, I love you the most, it seems. And there's this other woman named Mabel Katz, and she's studied with Dr. Hew Len, and she does her own, talks and seminars. You can find some of her talks on YouTube. She does have a lot in Spanish because she's from Barcelona, but she has some in English, and she's an amazing speaker. She has a book called The Easiest Way, and all she says is thank you. Thank you. That's all she says. And so you don't technically need to say the entire prayer, because some people, tend to have an issue with, I'm sorry, please forgive me. Maybe they might have some resistance, thinking like, well, what am I apologizing for? Am I apologizing to them? Like, I don't feel like I did anything wrong. And it's like, no, you just surrender it. Like, don't get too caught up in the words. If it bothers you, just say, I love you or thank you. It's making the situation right, whether you say the entire prayer or just I love you or just thank you, or both I love you and thank you, whatever resonates with you. Okay, so in Dr. Joe Vitale's second book, At Zero, and in the second course that I took with him, he talks about a fifth phrase. And his fifth phrase, so this has nothing to do with Dr. Hew Len or Morna or Mabel Katz. This is a Joe Vitale thing. He came up with the fifth phrase, I forgive myself. And as soon as I heard it, I wanted to amend it. So what sat right with me was, all is forgiven. So you don't need a fifth phrase. That's not, it's not the original hooponopono. It's just, hooponopono is the four phrases. And there's actually a lot more to it. There's a course called the Self-Identity course. Self-Identity through Hooponopono course, which is the original material that Morna created. And the course is actually copyrighted, so I can't go too much into it, but I will say that you can get the gist of it in the Dr. Joe Vitale and Dr. Hew Len course. And a lot of the material in the Self-Identity course did have some law of attraction-esque type things in it. And I don't actually want to continue to make law of attraction wrong. I don't want to make that phrase negative, because I feel like I have done that in my law of attraction versus law of assumption video. And I don't really want to do that anymore, because we don't need to label something and complain about something and make it wrong. I understand. I'm just sorry about this tangent, but I understand the premise of it. Like, you're putting power outside of yourself. The premise that the universe is separate from us and all of this stuff. But there are teachers that use the law of attraction label and don't believe in separation. So there's elements to it where it's like, put paper under your pillow and like whatever, pour water here, there, write something 55 times, and you can't get what you want until you do that. So those premises I don't agree with, but let's just neutralize law of attraction. Like, it doesn't need to be, we don't need to make it, a negative thing. We don't need to attach all of that heaviness onto it, I don't think. Anyways, the reason I'm saying I went on that tangent was because some of the they call them cleaning tools in the Self-Identity course, so I'm not going to go into them because it's copyrighted. And there is some overlapping information in the course that I took with Dr. Joe Vitale and Dr. Hew Len. Obviously, there's overlapping information, but the Dr. Joe Vitale course wasn't copyrighted and the Self-Identity course was. But anyways, there were a lot of tools in there, like eating different foods and, different rituals that are similar to some of the law of attraction techniques that just, you place meaning on things. So if you want to believe that eating a certain thing or drinking a certain thing, cleans and erases memory, then all the power to you. There's nothing, you're not hurting anybody by doing that, but it, again, like giving your power away. Like, why wouldn't you just say I love you or thank you and feel peace within yourself? So I don't think it's necessary to, eat certain foods and do certain rituals to be able to get yourself to zero. You can do that without anything around you at all. All you need is yourself. ever. That's all you ever need is your own mind. I have noticed since practicing hooponopono, saying I love you and thank you to absolutely everything, giving love to everything, throwing love at everything, you know, inanimate object, people, animals, just getting myself to peace. You know, it's a very profound peace feeling to see through the eyes of God and, you know, treat everything as though it were sacred, because nothing's outside of yourself. Everything that the way in which you treat others and, you know, your environment, it's a mirror of how you're treating yourself. How you treat others is really how you're treating yourself. So I absolutely adore Ho'oponopono and those premises. Let me know in the comments down below if you have learned anything new about Ho'oponopono. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, I thank you so much. If you want to do something fun, I thought I would start a little new thing for people who watch to the end of my videos. If at the end of this video, I'll do something else, something different for every video, but at the end of, if you're here watching, thank you, I love you. Leave a Hawaiian flower emoji. I don't know if they have that on YouTube, but whatever you can get to, closest thing. You know, I know on the emojis on your phone, you can get that Hawaiian flower. If you can leave a Hawaiian flower in the comments below and hit the like button for me, smash the subscribe button for me, hit the bell for me if you liked this video and want to see more videos like it. Thank you so much for watching. I love you so much, and I will see you in my next one. Bye. Have you ever... Have you ever noticed